All right, so this is the September 13th meeting of the Faculty Advisory Committee to the Board of Regents. We'll get started here. I circulated an agenda. I can share that to everybody. I think it's this one, yep. So is there a motion to approve the agenda? So moved by Mark Jackson, I see. Second. Okay, Matt and Kalina second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so the agenda is approved. Thank you. I'll stop sharing for a moment. I neglected to circulate minutes, so I'm way behind on that, and it is foremost on my mind. We've been trying to work on a couple of different things for FAC, one of which involves the processing sort of the NCHEMS report and some of the work being done by, I think I'm calling it FAC, Higher Education Finance Sustainability Advisory Board, FSAB. So they've been busy recently and been just trying to sort of digest that. And so minutes as well as doing a live stream on YouTube aren't quite where they need to be, but I'll work on that. So next item on the agenda is the report of chair and vice chair. And so I do have a quick presentation on, in particular, the NCHEMS portion of the last HEFSAB meeting. So I will do that really quickly, just to offer some reflections on sort of claims made and methodology used by NCHEMS, at least in their presentation on Monday. So let me just get my slides set up here. Let's see. All right, and share my screen. Okay, can you see the presentation here? Okay, great, thank you. So as I said, I just have a few critiques I'd like to offer about what I've seen so far with respect to this description of what's happening with public higher education in Connecticut, and also in relation to other states. There's a quote I kind of like. I'm going to offer a few quotes at the beginning here, but you know, if those who do not toot their own horn find that their horn goes untooted. So I'd like to start by just saying that this is not the first time I've thought about higher education and what happens over time in higher education. One of my earliest publications is on that subject in the Journal of Human Resources, cited by a number of folks. So I just want to sort of mention that by way of context and move on from there, not dwell on it too much. Just a little more sort of background and reflections on the NCHEMS work relating to CSCU. Now, I am not entirely certain how much the state is paying for this study. I did go through Open Checkbook, and I could find about $250,000 being paid to NCHEMS. I don't know if that's this particular contract or multiple contracts. And you know, $250,000, like maybe in consulting world, isn't a great deal of money, but I do note that at least at Eastern, 13 full-time students could have had a free year of attendance for that amount of money. And when I opened the PowerPoint slides from NCHEMS, I was confronted with this title, I guess embedded in the presentation, that says Oregon Environmental Scan. And I think it is the case that NCHEMS has done some work for Oregon recently. And so my first concern is maybe someone just took Oregon's slides and like started applying them to Connecticut. And I kind of worry a lot about cookie cutter approaches to what's happening in higher education systems because every state is quite different. I think it goes without saying that Connecticut is not Oregon. We are both coastal, but we're on the Atlantic, they're on the Pacific. And another thing is Oregon is the 15th most equal state for income in the United States. Connecticut is the 48th worst state for income equality in the United States. Points that aren't mentioned in the material that's been presented so far, but that was the first thing that sort of jumped out at me when I opened the file. All right. So one of the earliest slides about their study makes some claims about backdrop for what's happening to CSCU, and the first claim is declining enrollment in the CSCUs. Now, I was kind of floored by that because I asked CFO Blanchard for a copy of the enrollment report. I think I sent it around to everybody in August, and that actually showed enrollments going up by 3%. So it's a little like a bit of whiplash here where our members of our General Assembly who make important decisions about our campuses are being told one thing when the enrollments are doing something else, and we're paying $250,000 for that kind of thing. But it's not my decision, I guess. So, and then a prolonged unfavorable demographic condition is described, and this actually kind of reminded me a little bit, the way the data is used and described in the study reminded me a little bit of a quote from a Scot named Andrew Lang, who said he uses statistics as a drunken man uses lampposts for support rather than for illumination. Okay, we're supposed to learn from the data. We're not supposed to sort of, work with the data so that we can make statements that we already believe in. That's not how data is used. And I'll tell you why I'm concerned with that. So here's a graph on so-called demographics. And the description of this graph is that Connecticut is facing years of sharp declines in the traditional college age population. And if you look at this graph, one of the green hues, the 15 to 19-year-olds, it seemed to show a steep decline. But the problem with this graph is that it uses a well-known trick of data presentation. It's a distortion, actually, which is to omit 0 from the graph, the origin. And when you do that, you overstate trends. Like visually, it looks like, oh, that's a big change. But when you leave out the origin, it looks like a huge drop. But when you add the origin, it looks different. Okay, so that's what I did. I got their data and I added the origin. And, okay, some lines are going down a little bit, but I don't know. It's not like radical, right? And keep in mind, this is like until 2040 in this data. So I don't see a sharp drop here. Describing it that way, it kind of seems like a hyperbole to me, right? Maybe there's some drops here, I guess, but I wouldn't describe this as like a crisis or a cliff or some of the other terms that we hear sometimes, right? I mean, it's subjective, but let me show you some objective things to kind of get this across a little bit more. Now, let's just assume that we believe these projections, and I'll tell you why you may not in a second, but let's assume you believe them and let's work with them, okay? So it says, these projections say that there's a drop of about 3,800 15 to to 19-year-olds, going out through 2040. Okay. Now, on average, 66% of those folks in Connecticut would attend tertiary, go somewhere, continue education after high school. And then 57% of those would attend in-state. Okay. Not necessarily like in-state with us, but that was the best number I could get. And of course, when you multiply those two things together, you get 0.38 or 38%. Okay, so what that says is even if the demographics go down by 10 students, at most, we would maybe expect to lose 3.8, right? Looking at the demographics alone overstates the impact on our campuses. And I worked through the numbers, and those numbers, again, I don't know if I believe them, but if you did, you'd say about 765 students lower at CT State and 812 at the CSUs. And if that's like a steady state thing that like repeats over time, we're talking about an 8% drop in enrollments. Not a cliff really though, right? Not double digits even. And the other question I'd ask is, do we really believe like we're incompetent and we'll just kind of like accept that and nothing we do can like address it? I don't believe that about us. I definitely don't, knowing my colleagues. And does this study just assume that our elected leaders are going to fail at like leading our state? I mean, they kind of are responsible for creating an environment in which people want to live and bring their children and educate children. So are we just saying like, oh, they're going to fail at that? I don't understand why we would necessarily assume that. Another observation is that the projections actually have the 15 to 19-year-olds increasing in 2040. Right? So this could just be a temporary phenomenon, maybe. And, I'm just generally not confident in any kind of crystal ball if it's used in a certain way, particularly in the way it's used in this study. So let me show you some sort of crystal ball usage that I think is more responsible. Okay. So these are projections done or forecasts done by the Federal Reserve of a bunch of different, economic indicators over a shorter period of time. This is the way you do it, okay? And you'll notice there's these sort of fan-looking things, right, which show uncertainty in the estimates, right? Because that's how data works. Sometimes it's higher, ends up being higher than you project. Sometimes it's lower, and you tell people this is how uncertain we are over these projections. You'll notice that as you go further out, and they only tried to do this over 8 years, like 24 years or 25 years, that's pretty aspirational to forecast anything involving humans. But in any event, you'll notice that these fans widen as you forecast further out because the uncertainty grows, right? As you're trying to predict further and further out in the future. That's the way you do this. They're not doing it this way. I mean, even when we forecast something as important as like a hurricane, we know to do this. The cone of uncertainty, right? That's what it's called. Like, here's where the hurricane is now. In 7 days, like it could be here, but it could be over in a whole bunch of other places. Where is this, right? It kind of strikes me as like sloppy time series practice in demographics. And, I just think we kind of need to note this because we're talking about pretty important things, right? We're talking about education of the future generations here in Connecticut. And I don't think we should sort of be cosplaying data usage with the stakes that are involved for our state and for our students. Honestly, what I've read so far would fail a statistics class, certainly at the graduate level, but maybe at the undergraduate level too. So let's do their job for them, okay? Notice that they forecasted the past, which is itself kind of weird. Like we don't generally predict the past. We kind of know what happened, right? They predicted what the population in Connecticut would be in 2015. That's because they're using old data. They're using data pre-pandemic. But the nice thing about having forecasts of the past is we know how wrong it was. So we can calculate that. Thank you for using old data. So let me tell you how wrong they were. with these old pre-pandemic forecasts. Again, I think we should use more recent data, right? This is important stuff. That's why we have these meetings. That's why we spend so much time talking about it. So since we have forecasts of the past, but we know what actually happened, we can estimate prediction errors. And based on the numbers I came up with, it was about 30 basis points, 0.3%. Now that may not seem very large, but remember, we're multiplying by millions. In demographics, that kind of error matters. And it turns out to be around 11,000 people. We're talking, that was the average misestimate. That's pretty large compared to the enrollment decline that they guessed. In fact, I think it's even bigger than what I put on this slide because I had to change some of the earlier numbers, but that's a pretty major error in forecasting that's kind of embedded in this report so far. All right, so there's more things I could have said. There's additional concerns, but I think at this point that's enough. I think there's unjustifiable overconfidence in inference in this report so far. It's not a very careful use of data. It's old data. There's no discussion of the rising diversity of students earning credentials on our campuses. Like, we know that's extraordinarily important, like for Connecticut and for our students and for our communities. But there's no discussion of that. As I said earlier, Connecticut's one of the worst states for inequality, and we're kind of helping to address that through our work. Again, kind of a subjective statement here, but I think that's easily worth more than what the state currently pays for the work we're doing. And so that's my sort of first pass at a response to what NCHEM's presented. So I'll stop there. Thanks for letting me share those thoughts, and I'd like to pass the floor to Kalina for her report, and we'll kind of maybe go from there.
Thank you for that. I had such a hard time listening to that portion of that meeting with NCHEMS because it seemed to be about nothing and in response to no question, just data. So thank you for breaking down why my brain could not receive it as information. It was not. Thanks. For me, I'll just say that over the last couple months, ASA has reviewed some modifications in Title IX stuff that is around, and I think subject to further modification. And then that this past ASA was an opportunity for each institution to give an update to the board, just sort of academic update what they're doing. And it was, it's well worth listening to, I think. It's kind of like what you were saying, Brendan, like, I think we are so much under crisis that we don't always appreciate how much really cool stuff is really going on. I was jealous of some of your first year courses at Eastern for sure. We're still innovating, we're still serving students somehow in the midst of all of this. So it's just nice to hear that and see what's going on. I think one of the most notable developments in terms of board resolutions. Oh, have we even talked? Yes, we have. I was going to say, like, new leadership. Yeah, no, Marty was here and everything. But one of the most notable developments in terms of board resolutions would certainly be this new resolution. I guess let me screen share it so that we can all just kind of look at it together. But this is a resolution on, hold on, I lost my WebEx meeting. There we go. On student services at CT State, because as we know, when the deficit mitigation plans were presented to the board in November of last year, CT State was facing the biggest deficit and had the most impact in terms of cuts and unfilled positions, reductions in services, etc. So this resolution requires CT State to cost out what it would take to, or itemize what it would take to restore the services that we lost over the last year or so, which is, lovely. Now, it doesn't specify anything about exactly how restoring those services would be funded. So that is definitely, still in question, but just the fact that they're doing a study of what it would take to get us back to, not ideal, but at least where we were a year ago, is significant. It's an improvement. We're gonna have to talk more about where the money comes from. There are many potential sources of money, and we're gonna find out really soon whether that extra $20 million that the legislature had for us in ARPA money is gonna come through. I've heard very optimistic things. So there might be an extra 20 million. But we also know that there was a difference between what the system office advocated for and what the rest of us advocated for. And that difference is about 33 million. But a lot of that 33 million is kind of tied up in various ways that we had hoped it wouldn't be. So it has not gone as yet at CT State. We have not yet seen any portion of the extra 33 million, the amount in excess of what this system office advocated for. We have not seen any restoration of services as a result of that extra money. It just hasn't been allocated to that yet. So, there's work to be done to get our hands on that money. And we have to figure out how it will be actually funded, but that is definitely a step in the right direction, at least, that we're looking at and costing out exactly what we've lost at CT State. So that's it in terms of reports. And then I do want to make a couple of requests. And I know in the past I've made like soft requests and been like, I'll follow up, whatever. I think at this moment, we got a little downtime in the summer, and I think we need to kind of do a lot of work, especially those of us at CT State, on two different items. One is on shared governance. I think that this body, in terms of, our focus is always shared governance. We've now seen a year's worth of CT State shared governance models sort of in action. That shared governance model was not itself developed by a process of shared governance, right? It was sort of imposed. And there's a lot to be, where's Andre? Andre's not here, but Andre has certainly pointed out some deficiencies. There's certainly others that have been pointed out elsewhere. And there's a lack of clarity. So I think it's important for us to review the shared governance process at CT State as sort of externally. And I really hope to put together a group of folks who will do that together and meet at least 3 times over the next month. Not just CT State folks, though, because I think we need the perspective of everyone and some comparison of what's done at the universities also, right? So I think it's going to be important to do a study on shared governance. And I believe that there's going to be a shared governance summit sometime in October, but I don't know how that works. I mean, it's probably, I don't know if it's a webinar. I don't know what a summit means, but and then the other issue that I think we need to start paying close attention to in advance of the next session, because there might be a cost attached to it. So it might have to figure into the way that we interact with the legislature, is ACME, which is the policy that concerns remedial developmental math and English. We have been talking about this forever and ever and ever, and we had folks from California come in and tell us what their AB 705 and 1705 has done and compared it to, loading, survival rates of the Titanic. We know how this can be, but we had been told that they would work on it and delay implementation. That was the concession, right? Work on it, delay implementation until fall 2025. Well, fall 2025 is coming up, and I have not yet heard from anyone any evidence that there is any substantive difference from what was initially proposed to what we expect to be implemented a year from now. So, it just seems like we're running out the clock, and then we're going to end up right back where we thought we were. So I would really like folks who are able to meet about that. And there is a lot of data abuse there too, Brendan. Oh my gosh. Like, we could teach a class just on the issues we're facing now and data use. And it could be a first year experience class at Eastern. Like, it would be fascinating. So yeah, get our hands on the raw data. And also, I think personally, also while these financial sustainability meetings are going on through appropriations, because part of what's going on here is that because we are such an unequal state, what it takes to bridge the gap is expensive. So there's going to be a cost associated with providing something adequate and making it very clear, because like financial sustainability, I think part of the question needs to be, what should this system of public higher education provide the state? And one of the things we think it currently provides the state is open enrollment institutions. But if we do not provide the kinds of education that allows students from every type of background to actually be successful in college level courses, then we do not provide open enrollment institutions. And what's worse is that when we are providing only one level of this education, and we've seen how devastating it can be, we're not just excluding students from higher education, we are taking their money and then excluding them, right? So we're further subsidizing more privileged students with these students' tuition dollars. It's a violation on every level. I think it needs to be described that way to the legislature. And when they are thinking about financial sustainability, they need to be thinking about what it would take to make sure that we serve students from every neighborhood in Connecticut. So for that reason, I would like us to revisit this. I know we've done it to death, but within the next month or so that we can get something to them while they're considering this. So yeah, so those are my two requests, and I would like to know who's interested in working on shared governance and who's interested in working on ACME. Okay, so I'm seeing so is the shared governance first? Okay, so Lois, paper. Lois, Mark. Okay, gotcha, Matthew. Brendan. Is that it? I feel like I saw another hand. Is that
I'll
it?
be on board. James Chaddick.
Okay, cool. And then Acme? John, Cat. Okay.
Sorry,
Anyone else?
Colina.
The thing with Acme also, even if you're not working on it, if we could find someone on your campus who's capable of, or someone who's on one of the groups, whether it's CSET or the CMAC, right?
Yes, CMAC.
If you can make recommendations so that your campus is represented or that your area is represented, please do. And then we'll get onto that. I definitely have a couple people from Gateway for sure. So we want it to be more than just us.
Okay.
I'll put that out. But as a core group to begin with, it would be John, Cat, me. Is that what are you saying something, James? I see you lighting up.
Yes. I was gonna say put my name on the Acme one because I have experience with that.
I can't hear you if you're talking, James.
Oh, okay. Because I'm having problem with the new thingy now. Okay.
All right. And then Lois, you had a hand up. Was that just to say something also?
Okay, man, this thing is not working.
You're
Yeah, I
muted.
was gonna say, can you put my
I
name
can
on
hear James actually, so I don't know.
Oh,
I
you
can hear
can hear
James
me or you
fine.
can't hear me?
Yeah.
I was muted.
Yeah, James, I can hear you complaining about being muted.
Okay.
Oh,
Sorry.
now I can hear him.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say put my name on the Acme one, rather than the share governance, because I have been working with the Acme ever since it started. And then also I'm not a voting member at CMAC, but I regularly attend their meetings. So there's a lot of people I know at CMAC. And then I can work with my colleague Arben as well. So with Acme, I know a few people, Deborah. Yeah, I have a lot of people I can reach out and communicate to and sit down with and talk with about that. Okay, so put my name in Acme instead, so I'll be more confident in that area. Okay.
Got it. Thanks.
Mhm.
Lois?
I just wanted to say that I've already started working on whatever it is they call governance. Um, because it's so opaque and everything is done behind the curtains and they're going after us very heavily on our ESL program and a bunch of different levels, and they're going after our graphic design program, and they've gone after other programs, and the governance structure is not a governance structure at all. It's ridiculous.
It's definitely an odd structure. And I should say, like, Andre's already done a lot of work on this also, right? So really all I'm saying, he's been encouraging us to do this. All I'm saying is we got to pick up on on that and run with what he started us off on. And I'm sure he's going to hopefully lead that part of it.
Well, as I said, I've been working on it as well because of what's happening here.
Yeah. Okay, great. So we're in good shape then. All right, I think that's it for me, unless I forgot something. Quick commentary on the shared services thing. There was ambiguous messaging from the board. I will say in terms of the funding, because you did hear itemize the stuff, with an intention of potentially funding and restoring services. But there was also commentary from other board members that suggested that in order to restore these services, we'd have to cut elsewhere, which is adorable, because I'm not sure what we'd cut. Roofs, ceilings, buildings, floors. I don't like there's nothing left, but just, there was some mixed messaging there, but certainly it seems that the board's trying to move in a different direction. So.
All right, I'm glad that work is going to take place. Shared governance is definitely an issue for CSUs as well. There's a lot of people. I'm kind of wearing my Eastern FAC hat in this moment, but there are 3 Senate committees at Eastern that are concerned with sort of alignment of the credit transfer policy with our new liberal arts core. The committees were not ready to sign off on the new credit transfer arrangement going into the summer, but it was approved anyway, and that's created a lot of sort of upset on our campus. So that's another example where the shared governance just what didn't work, and it just left at least one campus behind on an important matter like core curriculum. So yeah, I'm really glad we're going to try to work on some of those things. So the agenda has, I think maybe the Andre is listed as the next agenda item, but he isn't here, and we did, actually his item is number 4, but I think we did talk a little bit about shared governance as a key part of that item. The next item is BOR developments, and the resolution Kalina mentioned is certainly a big one. I just wanted to highlight one slide from a presentation offered by Chair Gway. and just maybe have a quick conversation about that. Because I'm not quite sure where this is headed in some sense. And kind of wanted to add this to the conversation. So Chair Gui had this slide laying out sort of three key sort of areas of focus: accessibility, completion, and talent. And then mentioned the idea of having three goals for each of these and then three KPIs for each of the goals. And I guess my question to the group would be, do we want to fill in those items somehow from our perspective? That is just a question because I don't know how that's going to get filled in. Maybe I should, and I apologize if I missed something, but and also, do we want to suggest KPIs, key performance indicators for each of those? So I want to open that to the group. I think maybe Lois just raised her hand. So Lois?
They actually have in the slide before that one, or whatever, what I've got, they actually have an example of their thoughts about accessibility. And the goal, their example goal is expanding dual enrollment opportunities by increasing partnerships with local high schools. So they're looking at turning us into a glorified high school. This is ridiculous. This is how they're going to improve accessibility by increasing partnerships with high schools.
Pam, did you ever hand up?
I did. Thank you, Brendan. The example that Lois provided was just for discussions in terms of format, so that no one is saying that that would be one of them. My understanding of where we are in the process is that the goals and KPI work has started at each of your institutions with your institution presidents and your shared governance structures on your campuses. In my conversations with Chair Gui, he has assured that the FAC as well as the SAC will be involved in the creation, editing, and final document of what these will be. I don't know, because Chair Gui is overseas right now doing his day job, what the timeline would be, but it will be short. And that's all of the information I have in terms of where we are, but I can assure you that he will reach out to the SIC and the SAC, excuse me, the FAC and the SAC to edit, develop, and finalize the document. Thank you.
Thanks, Pam. Thank you. I think Lois, you have your hand up?
None of this is happening at Norwalk right now.
So maybe there can be a conversation. Maybe people should reach out to, I'm going to ask my Senate president, what they're seeing there and if it's been delivered to, certain subcommittees. Maybe we can see how it's playing out in the local governance process. And but I do want to reinforce the idea that SAC, FAC, and the governance bodies are meaningfully engaged in setting these, because otherwise, we'll just sort of be at odds in terms of one group of folks believing in one set of goals and another possibly believing in a different group of goals, and I'm not sure that's going to get us moving forward. But yeah, any more questions or observations or comments about this?
I just want to emphasize that this is not happening at Norwalk. I'm the Senate president, and it's not happening. And it looks like there's a completion date here of November.
Well, the question is whether they're gonna loop in campuses or if they're gonna go straight to the CT State Senate also, right? And I think we should probably make an explicit request that the campus level input is included.
All right, so I think we might have another opportunity to talk about this before anything would be finalized in November. But yeah, I would suggest talking with like local administrations and senates and trying to figure out where this is, because I do think if we have an opportunity to provide input and ideas about how this might look, we should definitely be involved in that. So, and if there's something that's not aligning somewhere for some reason, you know, we should handle that. It is tough at the start of a semester too. I mean, there's a lot of, I think the dust has started to settle, for me at least, but you know, there's a lot of moving parts at the start of the academic year. So, all right, so if there aren't any more thoughts on that development, do have a potentially brief item on the agenda about our meeting schedule for 2025. I just wanted to start that conversation so you know, we could pin things down a little bit. I actually don't remember completely how we've worked that out in the past. So yeah, how do we want to do this for the next year?
Yeah, Pam, thanks, Pam.
Next month in October, I reach out to each of the committee chairs to request their preferred dates and times to start building the calendar. We work on, the state requires us to work on a calendar basis, not an academic year basis. So our dates for the remainder of 2024 were approved last year in December and submitted to the Secretary of the State. So we begin development in October. So it might be beneficial to just do some initial polling in terms of dates, days of the week and times, and any particular conflicts that the faculty might have in terms of finals and those things that we want to stay away from. You can send those to me or Brendan, Kalina, we can talk about how that would play off of whether it's finance or ASA or both, and how you'd like them to appear on the calendar. But October is my building month. And then it would go to the full board for approval in December.
Great, thank you, Pam. Thanks so much. Mike, did you have a hand up?
Yeah, I was only going to say, Pam's talking, of course, about the subcommittees, but you were talking about our FAC meetings, correct? So, and I just want to put in that you said no, Pam, I'm not, I just wanted.
No.
Yeah.
I'll need FAC committee, the faculty advisory committee input as well as the ASA and finance, all of the advisory committees as well as the standing committees
Right.
to be working on their schedules.
I understand that, and I'm glad you wanted our input on that, all that. I just wanted to also say that in terms of our regular meetings, the FAC meetings, we tended to do the second Friday of every month in the past, because you said you weren't sure about the past. I guess Kalina could talk about this too, but I just want, so, and then, you know, I don't know if we want to try to, we haven't in the past, you know, tried to time it with, let's say, when the board meets, and that may sometimes run into a problem, but I think the Friday, I mean, I don't know. It's good to plan ahead and we tend to meet on Fridays. And I just was suggesting to make it easier for you, you might just want to start with the second Friday of each month, except when it's a holiday or something like that. And then we tended to move it. But Kalina may have more opinion on that, but just was trying to make it simple for you to think about how to do it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you.
So Pam has been really helpful over the past couple of years to give us a draft that puts us roughly on the second Friday of each month. but tries to align it so that, because for a while we were out of sync. So there might be like we didn't have time to meet after committees met and then so that we could talk before the board met. And I think now, for the most part, we're aligning them so that you have ASA and finance, et cetera. We meet and can have something official to intervene on the board. So that's why it's helpful to get the draft from Pam, and then we usually modify it from there, but like that has been really, so again, thank you, Pam, for that. And and we have to keep an eye on that too as we modify them based on our availability, just noting when we will not have time to pass a resolution or discuss something in advance of a board meeting. I just want to make a note of something, and I want to be very careful to not be overly critical, because I really do appreciate so much about new leadership of the board and what appear to be significant improvements. And at the board meeting, the full board meeting that both Brendan and I missed on the 28th, the actual content of the meeting was it was actually, I think that resolution was certainly informed by many hours of conversation that we had had with board chair and others, and very pleased with it. But we still have little things to iron out. So there was a lot of conversation about shared governance, etc. But that was scheduled as an in-person meeting with a lunch afterwards where folks could, it's so important to be in proximity to each other and develop those relationships so that we could actually work well together. Unfortunately, it was scheduled on the first day of classes, right on top of Brendan's course schedule. And that was disappointing. So we have a little work to do going from intention to action. But again, I am pleasant, like there's such significant improvement, even just in the way that the board is now interacting with the community and talking with community leaders, corporate leaders, legislative leaders, to really get us in a position where we might be able to move in a better direction. So I know I spent a lot of time criticizing things. I'm not necessarily doing that. I just want to, because this is the first board meeting I've missed in almost 5 years on the board. And it was one meant to create connections, and the 2 members of faculty were not able to be part of it. So that was too bad. But I just want to explain why we weren't. It was not for a lack of interest.
Pam, did you have your hand up?
I did, thank you. And agreed, we wish we could have had more membership, both on the board side as well as our ex officios. You might have noticed we had very few. One of the things that Chair Gway had said that going forward, he wanted to have a scheduled, not a special, but a scheduled meeting right before the beginning of the semester to launch the semester. Because normally the board is in recess in August. So his request to have an August special meeting came as an unplanned adventure. And we will be doing regular pre-beginning of semester work going forward. So you'll expect to probably have one in late January to launch the semester and going forward there. So that is something that he wants to initiate going forward. If I could go back just a quick sec on the calendar, I'll try to get a draft to you, Brendan and Kalina, in advance of your October 11th committee meeting, so you can have it for discussion and at least start planning to see if there's anything obvious that we need to shift around to make the pattern work better in terms of committees, advisory committees, and then the full board. I've been removed from the faculty side of the business for a long time. I want to make sure that I'm respectful of when you guys are grading papers or you're proctoring exams or whatever it happens to be, and we shift around accordingly. So I'll try to get something built for your October 11th meeting. That's it.
Great. Great. Thank you, Pam. Thanks so much. Thank you. Yeah, and I'll sort of echo what Kalina was saying about increased dialogue between faculty and regents in particular. I think that's been a very healthy development in a lot of different ways. So yeah, the more of these opportunities we have to discuss agendas and plans and that sort of thing, the better. So we'll look forward to that. And okay, great. So I do have, as item 6, I have sort of an open item for any old or new business. I don't know if there's anything anyone would like to bring up for that item. Um, so I'll open the floor. All right, sounds pretty quiet. I will say that there is a draft circulating on one of the CSU campuses of a new policy on sort of non-disruptive activism on campuses. I think it's I believe it's supposed to be the next step in the new Title IX policies, the interim Title IX policy, which I guess has something about conduct. And so this draft outlines a number of things. And I think some people are asking whether it would potentially limit expression more than is necessary. So that discussion has started. And I don't know if that's happening in CT State or any other campuses, but we are aware of it on one campus. So that I thought I would mention that for everybody. And there's a hand. Jonathan, did you have something?
Yeah, you just prompted me to ask, and I probably should know this. I missed I missed the summer meetings, and it may have been in minutes. But I was wondering what happened to our resolution on speech and free speech and activism in campuses. It was sent to a subcommittee. Did it just end there, or was there any resolution of that?
We did not make progress on that, and maybe now is the time to really look at it again. And I can circulate the draft of this policy that I've seen from one campus. I think there was a lot happening in that moment, particularly at UConn, and there was a little bit of sort of a question about what we should say about political expression on campuses and that sort of thing. So I do think we should look at this again. It's a pretty thorny issue. I will circulate the draft
Yeah.
out of Western that I've seen, and I don't know if other campuses are looking at something similar, but it did. I had a number of questions about whether certain prohibitions were really all that necessary. And so I'll send that around.
Yeah, thanks. And I wasn't necessarily bringing it up to try to put it back on the table, although certainly I'm fine with discussing it. And yes, it is an issue that takes a lot of kind of deliberate attention to and can't just be wrapped up probably in one meeting. So but yeah, I have to say I was surprised that this committee of all committees was so skitterish about endorsing a free speech commitment to free speech academic, but yeah, I'll just leave that there.
Yeah, I mean, just speaking frankly, I do think there were a lot of things developing at UConn that people were kind of aware of in terms of even sort of labor-related issues that were connected to what was happening there. And so it was way more complicated from what I've heard than what I was aware of. And so I think that was part of it. But to my mind, this should be about us and what we expect on our campuses and our protection of free expression on our campuses, which is obviously extraordinarily important. So yeah, let's make sure that is an item we continue to look at and think about. And when I send around this policy draft, that might prompt some discussion because sometimes these things do start to replicate across other campuses. So, you know, I'll send that around and we can maybe talk about it. So, all right. Any other items people would like to discuss? All right, good. Well, thank you, everybody. Well, I guess we do have to have, I don't know if there's a proposal. Andre usually handles this, but I don't know if there's a motion to wrap up the meeting here and adjourn. All right, we have a couple of motions, so I think they usually typically just pass. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy your weekend. Yeah, I'll see you at the next meeting and thanks again for your service on our committee. And I look forward to the ongoing discussion. So thanks, everybody. And
Thanks,
I'll-
Brendan, Kalina,
Thank you.
all.
Thanks, Brendan.
See you.
Thank you. I'll stop the recording here.
Thanks for your leadership, guys. Appreciate it.